Go.
Good evening, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Lee Smith, and I'm the current Vice Polemarch of the Brooklyn, Long Island Alumni chapter of Kappa Fraternity Incorporated. As part of our community service efforts, the Brooklyn, Long Island Alumni chapter regularly hosts community events to educate our constituents on issues that affect us all. The pandemic has forced a lot of our efforts to virtual spaces, but the need to continue our education around community health is now more important than ever. So like with Black History Month, for Women's History Month, we wanted to continue including weekly virtual programming that allows us the opportunity to hear from experts and various professionals from the comfort and safety of our homes. We will be celebrating all of the sororities of the D9 organizations this month with the theme of Real Talk, the Women of the Movement, Lessons, Legacy, and Leadership. Last week, we kicked off the celebration with the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha. And we continue this month's events with the lovely women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Through the end of the month, each Thursday, we will be joined by equally stellar panels of leaders from Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated next Thursday, March 24th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And wrapping out the month with Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, celebrating their centennial on March 31st, 7 to 8:30 p.m. as well. We encourage you to share each one of these sessions with your networks and to tune in to listen to these dynamic women that are throughout our communities. And now over to your moderator for the evening, my brother, Kevin Boston Hill. Kevin.
Thank you, Brother Smith. I appreciate the warm introduction. And thank you again to all of you who are viewing this on Facebook and through other means. Thank you for tuning in for this next installment of our webcast series. And of course, this evening, it's a special honor to be able to be among the devastating divas of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated as we get into this line of questioning. So I'm going to get right into it. we're going to introduce each of the panelists, and then we're going to get right into the questions, because I'm sure you at home also have some questions that you would love to ask these lovely ladies, and please feel free to do so. Type your questions into the chat feature of Facebook, and we will definitely pass those questions along to the ladies of the panel. Get things started. A child of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Erin Brown is an accomplished musician and singer, and quickly developed a penchant for evidence-based decision-making, a skill that continues to serve her well. Having earned a degree from the Harris School of Public Policy, Sora Brown uses this experience in her role as the interim diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator at the United States Agency for International Development. The agency leads development and humanitarian missions in over 100 countries, many in Africa and the African diaspora. In fact, because of her expertise in strategy and change management, as well as a deep concern for diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, this role was created just for her, and she has also served as president of the Blacks in Government Employee Resource Group and as an equal employment opportunity counselor. Moving right along in alphabetical order, the proud daughter of hardworking Guyanese parents, the Honorable Valerie S. Hollingsworth Esquire, grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and earned her Juris Doctor degree from Cleveland Marshall College of Law at Cleveland State University. Sora Hollingsworth held several positions until earning the position of Senior Administrative Law Judge in New York City. She continues to serve her community as a charter member of East Kings County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, charter member of the Gotham Parliamentarians of New York, and serves on the advisory boards of the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development and Kings County Hospital. As a Queens-based attorney with over 22 years of experience, the Honorable Denise Johnson White Esquire has run her own firm and served as an assistant corporation counsel for the New York City Law Department, and is the past president of the Macon B. Allen Black Bar Association. In addition to her service in several professional legal organizations, Sora Johnson White is a proud member of the Queens Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and is passionate about access to justice for all. As a fellow alum of Hofstra University, Tanya F. Levy Odom is no stranger to leadership. Her hard work in earning degrees from Hofstra and Fordham University has led to her current position as Director of BlackRock Investment Stewardship Americas. In addition, Sora Levy-Odom has held leadership positions in every chapter of Delta Sigma Theta she has been a part of, including as a charter member of the East Kings County Alumni chapter, not to mention her service as president of the Hofstra Black and Hispanic Alumni Association and Hofstra Alumni Association, and service on the Board of Trustees at the Brooklyn Children's Museum and the New York City Economic Development Corporation. As an initiate of the greatest year in fraternity sorority history, 1994, Shimon W. Harris has over 18 years experience in talent management and learning development with expertise in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology fields. Sora Paris is an active member of the Durham Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, the Raleigh, North Carolina chapter of the Links Incorporated, and the Capital City Associates chapter of Jack and Jill of America. On top of all of this, everything that she does, Sora Paris is an avid runner, having run in 3 of the world's 6 major marathons, Boston, New York City, and London. Ladies, welcome to our program this evening. So let's go ahead and get right into things, because you each have such very distinguished careers. So what role, if any, did Delta Sigma Theta play in helping to get you to where you are now? And do you think you would be in this same space if not for your membership? And any of you can go ahead and start.
Look, I'm 95, so I'm going to defer to one of my 94 sorors. So
I guess I can start out. I think my path to Delta really started because of women ahead of me that impressed upon me just a legacy of excellence and striving for excellence, as well as that involvement in the community. It was an expectation. It was something that was held up as something always to strive to do and for the betterment of not only yourself, but also of the community. I have 2 cousin sorors that are older than me. One initiated me at West Virginia. And then as I came through my pyramid journey and I learned more about this distinguished women, Sadie T.M. Alexander, you have so many distinguished sorors. I had the honor just of meeting so many sorors throughout the years who have been distinguished in their careers. And that groundwork of excellence and learning about being so much in the community, it definitely had an effect on me with moving forward in my career. And then learning how to do things within Delta and the level of excellence that was expected was something that I have carried over to my career, because you don't ever have to do anything. And you always expect things to be at a level, and you question when that level is not there. You always push. And people may look at you sometimes and say, oh, why is she pushing things? So, well, because that's how Deltas do. And so we all know what that means. That's how Deltas do. And it rings true, and it's throughout all of Delta. It's just how we do things. And people know that we mean business, that we know how to carry on business. And we do things that way, whether it's at work or whether it's in the community, even things that sometimes people may think, well, that's a small project, but still it's reflective, right? And so we make sure that we have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's.
may I piggyback on that? Because I just want to be, I want to be clear, because in of those sorors that I know on this panel, I think that I could extrapolate that to many others that I know. I want to be clear that you attract what you are. And that I believe that those that are members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated are naturally attracted to what Delta represents, but we are attracted to what Delta represents because that is who we are at our core to begin with, right? And so while I believe that Delta can play a role, but I would like to believe, and I firmly do believe, that these women that I'm on this panel with were who they were before they became members of Delta Sigma Theta. Delta may have amplified it, refined it, but they were at their core who they were. And I wanted to also, to also piggyback on what Soror Paris was saying, I do believe that there are some things that you learn while you're in Delta that help to, that serve you well when you're in the professional environment. So while you take on, you have already who you are at your core, which is about a business type of person, but then a layer on top of that, the ability to be able to navigate the different personalities and identities, because we're not a monolith, right? So all the various identities, and especially those that aspire for leadership in Delta, you most definitely, if you can survive political leadership in Delta Sigma Theta, you can survive anywhere. Let's just go ahead and put that out there. So I think that we are who we are at our core. Delta and what Delta stands for attracts those because the Delta attracts who she is. And then on top of that, as we are navigating our way throughout the years of our years in the organization and our service to the organization, that we learn skills along the way, mostly soft skills that empower us as we operate in our careers. I'll stop there.
I'm gonna 90s Soros talk. You go, Sam.
Yes,
go
I was about to say, isn't that a beautiful thing? I was just gonna say that, I mean, all that Soror Shimon and Erin has said is, just rings true for all of us. I mean, my experience, coming from Brooklyn, I'm one of two girls, the youngest, first one to go away to college. I knew nothing about sorority life until I stepped foot on the campus of the Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. And when I saw those Delta women, I was like, okay, who are these women? What are they about? And I saw that they were all in various leadership roles on campus, whether within Delta. Of course, I was not a Delta at the time, but they were president of the chapter, vice president, what have you. And even the professors, and they just all had this swag about them. They were just about the business. And I was like, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to. And then my best friend, who I always admired, she attended another university in Maryland, and I always tried to emulate what she did. And when I found out that she was pledging my freshman year, I was like, girl, what are you doing? And what little she can say, of course, I was like, okay. And then when I went to visit her after she had become a member, and I mean, it was just universal. It didn't matter what campus you went to, it was always the same. These women were about their business. And I was like, I was sold after that. I knew that I had to be a part of this organization because it's going to be good for me. And it has served me in my 34 years now, and I don't regret it to this day. I'm going to lead it off to you, Tanya, or Denise, whoever wants to chime in afterwards.
I'll piggyback on that, Sands. I would say, echoing all the things that Soros have said already, for me, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated was the one that I'm most identified with, because these were the women that said their organization was based on Christian principles, and having grown up in church, that resonated with me, and service resonated with me. I was already, volunteering with the American Red Cross, serving in church. So it just resonated, and I identified with it. And then the work ethic, I've been working since I was 15 years old, and, Delta's all about the sisterhood and the work. And so we work together and learn together as we are serving the community. And it's who we are, as Soror Brown said. It's reflective of who we are and amplifies all the skill sets that we have. And we learn things along the way. Lord knows we learn time management, and we learn how to have an agenda, run a meeting, and get things done expeditiously and in excellent fashion. So I think it reflects who we are. It connects us together. And I think that's why we are so bonded, because we identify with it. and it's who we are. It's endemic to everything that we do. And I will hand it over to Judge Johnson White to round out the conversation.
It's fitting that I go last since I only have 16 years of membership, so I bow down to all of my sorors. I just wanted to add also that I think that Delta has helped professionally in some ways, just based on the sisterhood, because there's going to be things that happen along your career, along your pursuit of an education, and in every step, and you need a safe place to fall. And I was raised by a Delta and raised by a community of Deltas, and they were always the women who would push me and encourage me to be the best. I never went to a school that didn't have Deltas all over the place. So the expectations of my life were always to emulate the excellence that I saw around me. And additionally, personally in Delta, having served in certain positions, especially in social action, I got to meet members of my community. I got to meet Congress people and lead meetings, which helped in my own pursuit to the bench where I knew I wanted to be. And I've been encouraged by Deltas who were judges, Deltas who are attorneys. My boss for 14 years, who is a judge, is also a soror, who was like, you can do anything you want to, girl, you're a Delta, get it done. So it has always been a blessing.
Ladies, thank you for those responses. It's very refreshing to hear that, and I know that it's something that's within you. To kind of piggyback off of that, we know that we heard this saying that iron sharpens iron, and based on your responses that you gave previously, that seems to be the mantra of Delta as well. Like you go towards you attract what you are, type of thing. So let's get a little bit more specific now, because you talked about Delta as a whole and some of the other people in your lives as a whole. But now let's talk specifically. Who were some of those unsung women? Let's name some names now. Who are some of those unsung women in your lives who helped you along the way, whether they were Deltas or otherwise?
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, Denise.
Judge Johnson White.
I'm so excited to be here this evening, and one of it because I have a good Aaron Brown story to tell you. So this is a perfect time to bring it up. So Soror Brown was previously in our regional nominating committee, and I was maybe 2 years in, went to a regional conference, and she was there, and I had no idea whatever I wanted to do in Delta, what I want to do in my life. I was just like, let me just go learn something. When I tell you that Soror Brown laid it down to know what your strengths are, find people who will help you sharpen those strengths, find people also who will tell you the truth about what your strengths are not, and to align yourself in positions where you make the best use of your time and talents inside of Delta and outside. After that, I got my little self together and started trying to get into offices in Delta. But I never forgot that in any aspect of my life. So I am so happy to be on this panel today, because I've never gotten to say thank you to Soror Aaron Brown, because by doing that and constantly reassuring sorors that we all have something to give, you have no idea how many people you've helped.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Look, I put this little eye makeup on. You know, I haven't gone out in 2 years. I put this little eye makeup on today. Don't make me cry. No, thank you so much for that. For me, the unsung is my grandmother. My grandmother was that classic mother of the church, that one that, and I happen to be Catholic, but even the priests were like, whatever she says, because my grandmother ran the show. And there's a ladies auxiliary, or the Knights of St. Peter Claver. She was the head of her branch of the ladies auxiliary for 34 years straight. She played no games. And when I say that when she passed away, the whole little town that she was in came out because it just, and we already know that she's on a personal basis with the Lord, because she just embodies everything of what it was to be a good Christian woman. But it was also the fact that she only had a sixth grade education, but was one of the most well-read people of anyone around, and pushed all of her children to make sure that they got an education, no matter how poor that they happened to be. Her children got an education. She was the grandmother that she was hard on you, but she never forgot a birthday. She was always there at the graduations. And she may not have had the money to give you a gift, but you best believe when she went to her ceramics class, she was making you some ceramic something. I've got angels galore in my house, angels, elephants, everything, because that's what my grandmother could do, right? And so it was that tough love about the business, no excuses, get it done. But you knew that behind that veneer was just a big old softie, right? And so I actually, when people meet me, a lot of people that meet me that knew my grandmother recognize that I do have a lot of her traits as well. So when people meet me, I think what they receive is the intensity of me. But if you get to know me, there's a whole, I'm a clown, and I'll love up on you. That's just who I am. But when it's time to be about the business, I'm about the business, right? And so that much I get from her, and she's definitely my unsung.
I'm gonna follow you, Aaron. Soror, my love. My unsung hero would be my mom. And just similar to what Soror Aaron said, my dad, as a matter of fact, my 92-year-old dad, I love him. That's my partner in crime. For people that know me, that is how I refer to him. He gave me the best compliment yesterday. He said, and I'm gonna say it with his accent because my parents are Caribbean. He said, you're really your mother's child. And that's exactly what he said. He said, you are your mother's child. And it just warmed my heart because my mom was a registered nurse and midwife. Before they migrated to the US, she remained a nurse here. She delivered hundreds of babies. That's what she said. I believe her. And I mean, she was just the quintessential lady. I mean, she was hardworking. Every day she worked. She came home and maintained the house. And even in addition to that, she was active in things in the community. She was a member of her nursing organization where she held pretty much every position known. She was president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, you name it, she did it. And she did it with such pride, and she was meticulous in the way she handled things. And in addition to that, she became active in our church, the church that I grew up in. I was raised Episcopalian. And so she was one of the main people that maintained the church for Sunday. There's like a whole preparation process that you have to do before service the next day. We're laying out the linens and ironing the linens and making sure that the ministers have the correct robes and the correct colors. I mean, it's a big production. I mean, not to be funny, but that's how it was. And she knew that stuff like the back of her hand. And anybody that, if somebody needed to get some information, they'd be like, oh, Miss Hollingsworth would know. Talk to Miss Hollingsworth. She'll give you the correct information that you needed. And she was very much trusted with that. So I've always prided myself in anything that I do, whether it be work, extracurricular, whatever. I always try to do it with pride and give it as much positive energy as I can. I always like to see things get finished. I never like to see things half done or undone, especially if my name's behind it. So I've always patterned myself behind her as my unsung hero.
Well, I will chime in. Definitely my mom, who, even though I have 2 finance degrees, she knows how to make $1 out of 15 cents like nobody I know. I don't know how, still to this day, how she did it. But really the person I would like to highlight is Dean Deanna Hunter from Hofstra University. She's gone on to be with the Lord, but I don't think I would have made it without her. Being a first generation college student, I had no clue what I was doing. And she really gave me a pathway to, working on campus during the summers. So that came along with housing, so I could keep my off-campus job while I had an on-campus job, always working. But she also just really was there for me to answer any questions I had to kind of navigate through my college career. And even after I graduated, she made sure I came back, which is why I'm still a very active alum. I came back the year after I graduated to talk to students about recruitment from campus. And ever since then, really have been connected to the university and engaged in scholarships, particularly for those first generation students that are really trying to figure it out as they go. So I think it's really challenging to not have that foundation, even though you can Google everything today now. It's really hard to not have someone to talk to. And I was really grateful for her, because I don't know where I would have been had it not been for her. And, not only that, she was at, all of my baby showers and my wedding, she was really ingrained in my life for all the days that she lived after that. So I'm eternally grateful to her.
I'll go next, and I'll highlight two women who have been tremendously influential. One is a Delta and one is not. The first is my mother, Pamela Boomer, Minister Pamela Boomer, just a tremendous woman of Christian faith, and who just really exhibits so much kindness in the community, always just showing me how to have so much faith and to just make sure that I'm there for my fellow man, just making sure that I'm there for people, and also having a work ethic. She has such a tremendous work ethic, was with the Internal Revenue Service for more than 45 years of service, and still always working in the community throughout that time, and was the wife of a coach, which is difficult because coaches are always traveling, raised us always helping with homework and still doing things in the community as a minister with a full-time job. So that was just a tremendous example, and really set the example for me to have a great work ethic. And then also my stepmother, Dorothy Beard. She founded on the campus of UVA in the 70s, and she would bring me with her to Delta activities for the Fairfax Alumni chapter in Virginia, to their Saturday school program. And that's where I found out about Delta. And I observed Deltas in action, helping children, helping people in the community through service. And I was just in awe of these women. And I was like, wow, look at how they are helping people, how they are just organizing things, how they are doing things. And that was just it for me. I knew I wanted to be a Delta girl.
Wow. Well, thank you all for those wonderful stories. And again, to bring some notoriety to those women who may not otherwise get it, who definitely deserve it. So again, thank you for that. Now I want to get into a little bit more targeted questions with some of you. And of course, any of you please feel free to chime in and to kind of piggyback on the responses. And those of you who are watching on Facebook, please get your questions populated into the chat as well, so we can keep this conversation going. But I'm going to start with Sora Brown. You've mentioned that through your bio, you've mentioned that it is really important for the United States Agency for International Development to show up to the table in a particular way. So how important is sitting at the proverbial table, whether it's international, national, or local settings? And how can we, women and people of color, get an invitation to this table, or otherwise just pull up a chair?
So that's an excellent question. So first and foremost, as the country's foreign assistance agency, with the majority of our presence being in Africa and the African diaspora, to be perfectly honest with you, in addition to other countries, but I mean, that's where we have the majority of our presence. It is extremely important, given the nature of what we do, which is foreign assistance and humanitarian assistance, because we have teams out in Ukraine right now, when it is important for us to represent the American public, and the American public is not pale, male, and Yale. The American public is extremely diverse. And if we are truly going to represent the United States abroad, and that's for any foreign affairs agency, including State Department, then we must diversify that workforce. And the Biden-Harris administration has been very clear that it is a priority to diversify, especially the national security workforce, which includes USAID. Now, insofar as how do we get an invitation? I submit that it is not our burden to request an invitation. It is the burden of USAID, State Department, other foreign affairs agencies to not just invite people to the table, but to ensure, because here's the thing, we're not even the house in the room where the table is. You see what I'm saying? You know, and so representation matters. And so when you have these foreign affairs agencies that are predominantly pale, male, and Yale, then what you have is a lack of representation, and representation matters. And so when I don't know about you, but I know that from the time that I came out of the womb, my parents were asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Nobody talked to me about international development. And I've got a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees, and from really top tier institutions, and nobody was looking for me. Right. And so I think that the question is, how are these institutions like USAID going to find us? It is not an issue of there not being enough qualified people of color. The issue is that they're not hiring the people of color, right? And when we look at the data, we see that. So it is incumbent upon organizations like USAID to ensure that we are actively seeking out these, that people of color, as well as persons with disabilities and targeted disabilities, to ensure that we have a diverse representation of the United States actually within our organization. And so again, it is not about anyone that's under the sound of my voice needing to wait for an invitation. We need to be actively seeking out, and we need to be moving the table to you. That is what is, and that is what, from a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility perspective, that we're doing through our DEIA strategic plan. That's exactly what we're working on right now. So thank you for the question.
No, thank you for that detailed response. I saw our 2 judges here, especially, were kind of jumping around like they want to chomping at the bit to respond a little bit here. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Sarah Hollingsworth?
Well, ooh, child, it's the amen corner for me. It is an amen corner for me, because I mean, if we're not even given an opportunity to be in the room, I mean, how do you expect us to even make an impact? Because we're being glossed over on all fronts. And, I mean, not only as people of color, but also as women, we always have to work extra hard to get half of what our counterparts get. So I mean, I'm definitely in agreement, and that what is it, Yale pale and male, that's classic. That should be
Pale, male, and Yale.
Pale, male, that should be patented. I think you got something there.
That sounds, that looks like a t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't even take credit for it, but we
profound.
We
profound. I mean, very much so.
But I'm going to actually stay with you, Sarah Hollingsworth, because you have the distinction of having degrees in education as well as law, having received a master's from Teachers College in New York. And you are a registered parliamentarian here in New York as well. So how important is it for people to be versed in a variety of areas, not only for their own personal or professional development, but also for their political well-being?
I'm glad you asked me that question. I mean, we interact with all sorts of people in everyday life, people in our neighborhoods, people on our jobs. And I think it's very important that we be versed in various areas, because you don't have to have a whole set of degrees to make an impact. You can learn just from the average person. and I think it's important that we don't judge people based upon their surroundings, because you never know, because somebody could just, give you the inspiration or just give you some wisdom, something that could really propel you forward. So I think it's important to be just well-rounded, and as far as politically, the political portion of it, I mean, some people, to be quite honest, they're not, they're not always that involved in politics unless it's something that directly affects them. They may be the first one to criticize and say, oh, well, such and such is not doing anything and they're not about the people and all that. But I'm like, okay, but have you voted? Okay, have you gotten involved? I mean, have you taken the time to find out, to get to immerse yourself? I mean, not only, what you said, going to teachers college and going to law school and being a parliamentarian. I also work with the Board of Elections. I was a coordinator, a manager of a site. And then I got recently became a AD monitor, where I go around to the different sites to make sure that things are running smoothly. And you'd be surprised how, people would come, like at the bigger elections, but they don't realize that the smaller ones, the smaller elections, those are the ones that really matter, because the laws that are enacted have a profound and, impact on our community, on our daily lives. So it's important to be engaged. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, well, these electeds, they're not doing anything for me. I don't really care. But, like I said, have you gotten yourself involved? Have you taken the time to get involved? Because if you're not involved, don't criticize, because you really don't have a right to criticize, because you're not doing anything to help the situation or to improve the situation.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anyone like to piggyback off of that? I saw a lot of head shaking in there and finger wagging. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to jump in if you want to add something to that.
No, I just think Sora Hollingsworth is the epitome of direct service. She is not only learned in this particular area, but she is, as she said, actively engaged on the ground in her community. And she's also served on her community board. She failed to mention that as well. But she is phenomenal in that respect. And I think that is what's critical, to have people that are well-educated, engaged in our communities, helping and keeping people knowledgeable. I think it's outstanding. Kudos to you, Sands.
Well, I'm glad that you actually chimed in there, because I want to continue with you, throw the next question to you, Sora Levy Odom, because your experiences professionally and within your beloved Delta Sigma Theta are equally extensive, not to mention involvement with Jack and Jill and being with your family. So the question is, have you ever struggled with the potential to kind of lose yourself as you strive to operate at such a high level in all of the circles in which you travel? And how do you maintain that proper balance for you?
I decided to delete the word balance and think about it as reallocation. So, in finance, we have a portfolio, and from time to time need to rebalance and reallocate, because we have a finite amount of time. And for me, it's really about prioritizing and shifting and adapting as needed. I tell everyone, the one constant in life is change. And you need to be able to adapt with whatever that circumstance is. And there's a season for everything. Right now, I am in the advisory stage of parenting. I have kept them alive. They are educated. They have the things they need. And they are now one college graduate and one college freshman. And so Jack and Jill was critical at the time, one for me, to really fellowship with women that were raising their children, raising their families, trying to make sure that they were global citizens and leaders of the next generation, but also taking care of each other, right? Those are my Jack and Jill sisters, and I love them. And I'm now grateful to be an associate and on the other side, the sweet side of life, as we call it. Yes, girl.
That's right.
But, for Delta Sigma Theta, it is my lifetime commitment. I pledged at the age of 20, as a sophomore. I was chapter president as an undergrad. I was chapter president at graduate level. And I will continue to serve until God takes me home. But, you know, you ebb and flow into the degree to which you are engaged. And when my children were smaller, I thought I was going to ebb a little, but we decided to charter a chapter. And then, you know, once I finished my tenure as chartering treasurer and president, I was able to lean a little bit more with my children and really be engaged more thoroughly with Jack and Jill, and then become vice president of the chapter, Jack and Jill. So, you know, I think it's ebbs and flows of whatever you do. And with Hofstra is another constant in my life. Right now, I serve as the chair of the recruitment and membership of Women in Leadership Advisory Board, trying to bring more women that have graduated from Hofstra to see that it's possible for them to have a career and a future in whatever path of endeavor. But I think representation is important for women as we go forward. So all of those things feed me, and they don't, I think if you're doing something that's draining you, you're doing the wrong thing, right? So if you're engaged in something, it should be bringing you positive energy. It should be bringing positivity in your life, and it should be an intersectionality of all the things that you love. And it's really about how much time and energy you allocate to each one, but all of those things should be feeding you and giving you life, giving you energy to do the next thing.
Great. No, thank you for that. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will accept those words of wisdom as well, because I think it's really important to, and I like the way you phrase it, as a reapportionment of your abilities and your resources, because we all go through that as parents, as professional people. We go through those ebbs and flows, as you say, because we want to be the best for our children. We want to be the best for our community, for our organizations. And, you know, and it can get draining because of from an energy output. But when you think of it in those terms, how much energy you're going to portion to this one and then to this one, and in each season it might shift a little bit. I think that makes things a little bit easier to manage. So thank you for putting it in those terms. Okay, so we'll move on to Sora Johnson-White. I know that you are very well read in matters other than just the law, and because you've involved yourself in a lot of different causes. So how important is membership in a variety of organizations, both professional and service-based, to the advancement of one's career?
I think that, again, piggybacking off of so many things, you must surround yourself by various types of people and various situations that you care about. And if I only spent all of my time hanging out with lawyers, I would have the idea that this particular point of view is the only point of view. If I only spent my time hanging out with Deltas, I would think, well, this is what we are doing, and this is the answer. And you need to have, as I said, a balance or a shift. You need to broaden your circle. And the connections that you make are amazing in that you never know who's going to give you something that helps you. Perhaps it is the person in my civic association who just gave me a nugget of advice that helped me get through that day. Or maybe it was a person in Judicial Friends or a bar association. And many, many times it has been a Delta who may have said something, not even realizing that that is the word that I needed to hear at that moment, or that is the encouragement that I needed, or sometimes that's the connection that I needed to move to the next step. Additionally, we are not one show ponies. You have many talents and you have the opportunity to serve in so many ways. And all of them, I think, should be utilized. So I think it's very important.
Great, thank you, thank you.
May I tag on to that just quickly?
Please.
I know that they say that your network is your net worth, right? Mm-hmm. And there's some accuracy to that. But I also want to say, if I spent all my time just trying to network with other Deltas, there are opportunities that I would have missed out on. And there are times that my interaction and engagement in other organizations has led me to a job. So at USAID, when I first got to USAID 10 years ago, I was not employed by USAID. I was a fellow at USAID, and I had just walked away from my career in the private sector. I had been a senior principal at a global consulting firm, Hay Group, and I was burned out. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted my life to be about something bigger. And I decided that I was going to turn to government. And so I walked away from my job and went and worked as a fellow at USAID for free 99. I just want everybody to know I worked for free 99 for a whole entire year, except for transit benefits. They gave me they gave me a Metro card. But what I'm getting to is that meant that I had only a year to prove myself and figure out a way to navigate my way into that organization. And because I joined Blacks in Government, and because I decided to volunteer my services and serve on the board, first out the gate, when I joined Blacks in Government, it came down to my last 2 weeks in the organization. My fellowship was about to run out. The president of the chapter of the Blacks in Government at the time heard my story. And he was like, we have too many qualified, capable, intelligent Black people leaving this agency. Let me see what I can do. And he walked into the head of the office, the assistant administrator, which is the head of our bureaus, and the largest one in the agency, and asked, do you have anything for her? Now, of course, federal government employment is what it is, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring on contractors. And there was a contractor spot that was available in that. And with 8 days left to go in my fellowship, I got a job. She didn't know me from Adam. She brought me on as an institutional support contractor on the strength of that recommendation. That is what I'm talking about when it comes to when you have to know, be intentional about your career, about your path, and you will see, if you are being intentional, that there are many organizations and people in those organizations that can be vital actors in helping you to proceed on your path. Because if I had just failed to join Blacks in Government, I would have been without a job. Right. So I just want to go ahead and just provide that illustrative example that you really do have to work at expanding your network, because you never know when there's going to be that one person that's going to turn your whole career trajectory around.
Thank you for adding that. I'm sure everybody on the line here was also just shaking their head, nodding their heads like, preach, girl, preach, because you were talking some truth there for a minute. So thank you for that. So I'm coming around to you now, Sora Paris, because you are in a circle that is growing. Admittedly, it is growing, but may not be growing by enough leaps and bounds, because we know that there are a lot of programs today that are designed to increase the number of young women who enter STEM fields. And so based on your experience and expertise, can you speak to the vast opportunities available to those who are in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, for those out there who don't know, and how versatile the employment can be for people who are in those fields?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, right now is a fantastic time to enter these fields. And I feel that it's very versatile, because when you think of traditional jobs in these fields, so you think about science, you think about a lot of times people who want to go into medicine or dentistry, you may not think about the pharmaceutical or biotech industry, which are huge billion-dollar industries. We saw those industries grow exponentially even during the pandemic. And we saw how important the research that these industries conduct is, because we saw how the vaccine market was so important during that time. And we have to have people who continue to do research continuously in order to find different methods, different cures, different treatments, in order to make sure they're available and that we can find these and produce them in time to provide them to the public. So that's just one area of science. When you think of technology, you might think of traditional programmers, for instance, right? But we have AI, artificial intelligence. That is an area that is growing very, very rapidly. We also have something that is merging with finance called financial technology. So when you think about Bitcoin and you think about NTFs, which is these unique almost kind of like digital art that is being sold online and is garnering quite a following, and quite a lot of money is being invested in these NTFs. And that's something that young people are really gravitating towards. But there are entire careers now that are being built around these things. And when we think about some of the careers now, you know, it's estimated that 60% of some of these careers will go away, and that we will have new emerging careers. When you think back 20 years, you didn't think about social media managers. You didn't think about some of these careers that we have now, right? These careers now that are coming on the scene, they didn't used to exist. And these are STEM careers that are now emerging. So these are the things that our young people can now get into. When you think about math, you might have traditionally thought about things like people who went into being actuaries and things, or going into economics, and those are good fields. But statistics is an excellent field to go into, because data-driven decisions is a big thing right now in all businesses across all industries. People are looking to make data-driven decisions. They're looking to conduct more data analysis and to use that data. They need people who can analyze data. They need people who can make dashboards out of data. The machines can get the data, but what they can't do is they can't analyze and make sense out of that data and make the decisions. And so we need people who can do that. There are also unique opportunities that don't require degrees. So companies like Cisco, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are offering certificate programs to people. These are standalone programs, boot camps that people can go through without a degree. They go through these programs and then they go to work for those companies. So there are some unique opportunities as well. And that's not to dissuade anybody from getting a degree by any chance, but it's just saying that there are more opportunities and different workflows and different ways for people to get into these fields now than there ever were. And if you are not mathematically inclined, you know, I was a person who was not mathematically inclined, but I love science. So I got into doing training, talent development, and project management in a scientific field. And I learned enough about the science that I can manage a lot of these aspects, and I specialized in the industry. So through project management, through talent development, and some other methods, there are ways that people can still get into these fields as well.
Thank you for that. And as a follow-up to this, and of course, any of you can answer this question. This is a question that was posed to us from one of our viewers on Facebook, and we do encourage those viewers to continue to send in questions. But as a follow-up, how will the latest developments in science, technology, and so forth, as well as the other professional areas, how do these latest developments affect the way Delta conducts service within the community?
Well, I'll just chime in just in terms of shifting to a virtual platform in light of the pandemic, you know, particularly our education programs. I think there was great concern about our children being isolated or not having access. And we continue to reach out to them via Zoom. They might be all zoomed out by now, but we were able to migrate a lot of our programs to virtual platforms such as this, and still engage our children, you know, really have conversations with them about their own development, you know, separate and apart from schooling. And it's been fantastic. And hopefully we can continue to leverage this even in some hybrid form as we return to some in-person service. But we always have a manual. There's a manual for all of our virtual programming. And we have found a way to continue to execute and reach people where they are. And it's been fantastic, in my opinion.
And to follow on with that, you know, Delta has a partnership with Google, Grow with Google, where we're actually, you know, basically a train-the-trainer type of model, where we're actually training members of the community in the use of some of these Google tools to be able to help strengthen their own capabilities. But I think that what is probably longer term is what opportunities does it present from a partnership perspective? And so when we're thinking about how do we, you know, both from a service perspective as well as a benefit to members perspective. I think that, and benefit to even members of our program, like potentially third-party internships with, for internship opportunities for our youth groups and things like that. We need to be thinking about how do we leverage these organizations as part of our, as partners for our programs, as well as thinking through how can we leverage some of their services in delivery of other programs that beyond the youth programs in the community. So, and then also how can we benefit members as well? So that, those are definitely some things to think about. Over.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Okay, so as a follow-up to an earlier question, and I think Sarah Hollingsworth actually brought this one out, another viewer had responded with this question about along the lines of why people need to become more involved with their local political scene as opposed to the national one, or in addition to the national one. Because, and this good question goes to anybody, how do you all feel about the growing movement for those don't say gay bills and so forth, and how will it affect our community going forward? I know that's a charged question.
As somebody in the diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility space, it's not very charged for me, right? We have to start thinking about, while we have different marginalized populations, whether it be marginalization based on race, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, et cetera, at the end of the day, it's marginalization. At the end of the day, it cannot stand. Right. And, as far as, can you give me because I wanted to make sure that I got that out. Can you give me the full breadth of the question?
Yeah, so how do you feel about proposed legislation, such as the don't say gay bills and things of that nature that are coming out across the country?
I'll just speak for myself personally. There should be no room for that. We are on a trajectory in our country where there are efforts to oppress any number of communities and do so in a way that allows for the dominant, the dominant population, which would be primarily white, heterosexual, to control the narrative. And when you control the narrative, you have pretty much won the ball game. And what we see, what we see with bills such as this are their active efforts to suppress the narratives of these particular communities. And if we allow it with one particular population, it's a real slippery slope when it comes to other populations. And I also want to say that intersectionality is a real thing. And there, and very few of us have just one identity, right? And so, we have to also think about the fact that there are many that look just like us that are impacted by such legislation. And so when we're thinking about, how we battle oppression, we can't do it just for Black people. We have to do it for all marginalized communities. And so for me personally, I will speak for myself, this is something that cannot stand, and we must actively dissuade, as well as, speak to our legislators to get them to hear us, that this is just not a direction that we want to take this country.
Yeah. I agree.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was going to say, I agree that, and that's especially underscoring the importance of local elections. So, here in North Carolina, the upcoming Senate race is really heating up. And so there's national money already pouring in to this race. there, and I see topics such as this being touted under the guise of religion being used to say that, you know, this is the reason that this should be passed. And that's unfortunate because at least for me, the way that I was taught was not to marginalize people as a pretext for faith. So it definitely underscores that our local elections are very important, and we have to, as a people, we have to commit not only our vote, but we have to commit our pockets, because pockets are going to really make a determination in these things. And with the amount of money that's coming in, I know there's a lot of national money coming in. We have to support those candidates that are going to make sure that populations aren't going to be marginalized.
Soraya Johnson-White, go ahead.
One of our very beloved deceased sorors, Fannie Lou Hamer, said, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." And I will just say that I can't speak specifically on any specific law or bill that is being passed. However, the tide that is turning is pitting Group A against Group B, Group D against Group C. And we, unfortunately, many times in our community are buying into it's us versus them. And of course, there's two parts of that. A lot of them are also us. And a lot of them are in our families and in our communities, and we rely on their beloved members of our communities. But additionally, when you start to look at the same groups who are targeting them, it'll be next week when they're targeting us. Yeah. So we will never become liberated by oppressing other people. And I hope that as we see these things happen, you see more and more people getting involved locally to stop these things from happening in their community, so that our communities are being outspoken and being heard, that we're not going to tolerate hate, we're not going to tolerate oppression, and we won't be erased on anybody's legislative agenda.
And I just wanted to add, again, I'm speaking for myself personally and not for my firm, to be clear. But you know, there are a number of corporations that publicly disclose that their political donations and activities. And we need to be conscious about how we spend our money, use our money, invest our money, depending on how those companies allocate their funds for their political action, for their political contributions. And so that information is publicly available. And so we need to make sure that the companies that we spend money with are aligned with our values. So I just want to put that in the bucket as well.
Okay. So I guess to kind of continue off of that, and because all of you, as I mentioned earlier, all of you have such elevated positions in your respective careers, how can we combat the number and the level of attacks on the education of women of color when they are actually striving to get to positions in leadership?
Well, I'll chime in terms of access to education. I think there are so many pathways and resources to facilitate, whether it's girls who code in the STEM field, or women in finance. I think it's really a matter of making sure and amplifying the act that those resources are available, and making sure that people of color and women of color, girls of color, have access to those resources. So we need to be present. We need to be that representation for them, so that they are inspired to move forward and dream their dreams, right? To think big, to not be limited in their scope of what's possible. The thing that stays with me, that you can reach anyone, right? One of our activities that we did in EKC was we went into a juvenile detention center, and we showed a film to girls that were being detained. And trust me, they were not excited to be in a room watching a film about girls being educated around the world. But it did have some positive effects. One of the ladies eventually said to us, one of those girls actually stayed in school. They actually went on to advocate for children that were in that same situation. So you never know the seeds that you plant when you reach out to any community, any at-risk community, any underserved community. I think it's our responsibility to be forceful and be intentional about reaching out beyond our comfort zones and reaching out to people that would otherwise not see us or be, have someone that they can emulate.
And I'll just piggyback, one prong is access, right? And how can we help with making, resources available to them. The second is that about how do we work through our programming to minimize barriers to equity and work with our partners, and through our social action initiatives, work with our institutions of government in order to minimize barriers to equity. And then the third, I think that, Sora Levy Odom was speaking about, is that representation matters. And I believe that you never know who you're going to see, that you're going to encourage someone to go down to go and pursue a path that they otherwise might not have pursued. And so one of the reasons why I applaud Delta is that, we have not just one youth program, we actually have two for young girls and one for young men. But we're catching you as early as middle school, right? From a representation perspective, and from an access to resources perspective. We have our scholarship programs, and just about all of our chapters and the foundations associated with our chapters have scholarship programs, but also connecting with resources from institutions as well. We have all of our, college tours, et cetera, which have been, we've had to push to the side or minimize as a result of COVID. But again, exposure matters, because for some, they haven't even had that. So I think that if, we're talking about the three-pronged approach of access, minimizing barriers to equity, representation, I think all of those things help to contribute in encouraging more young women to pursue higher education.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think also what is helpful is doing your research, because, the information may not necessarily be in the forefront from you. If you're fortunate enough to have someone to, that representation or that exposure, that's great. But then sometimes it doesn't hurt to tap into those resources, whether it be in school, there's schools or libraries or, whatever, or even just interacting with other people, because you just never know what resources they can provide to you. So I think it's also important to do your research. If sometimes if you don't know, you got to ask. And it doesn't hurt to, Google's our friend. I mean, this world has become so internet conscious that, I mean, even for me, if there's something that I may not, know much about, Google's my friend. I go on the internet, look it up, and then I start to ask questions, and then look for those ties, those channels, those people. They may be people that I know, maybe people that know other people, and do the research that way. Ask the questions, put yourself out there. I mean, that's important. I mean, I think that's also important as well, to put your out there and do the work, ask the questions.
Yeah. One thing I'd also like to add is another way that we can and do help is by personally mentoring somebody who is behind you. And I know at this moment I have a first year, a second year, and a third year law school mentee. I have a young lady who's in the 10th grade who she told me in the 5th grade she wants to be a lawyer. I'm like, this is what we're going to do then. This is what we're going to do. It is very important to reach out through whatever networks that you have, your churches, your alma maters, maybe friends, children, or any other way, to encourage them to seek out, as Sora Paris said, there's so many avenues, even in science and technology, that children don't even know anything about until they have someone to be their mentor, to say, you're really good at this, maybe you should look into this field. So I just know that personally, and I'm sure Sora Hollingsworth is the same, I find any young person who talks a lot and likes to make a point is probably driving their parents crazy. I'm like, you should go to law school. That's what you should do. So I do want to add that to the prong, that mentoring as many people as we can is very important.
It's funny you say that, because that was me. That was me.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I remember in high school, I remember my English teacher saying, you would make a great lawyer. And I was like, okay, because at one point I had aspirations of being a veterinarian. Even though I love animals, I was just like, I guess I cut the line at, having to deal with reptiles. I was like, that's not the career for me. But, when she put it in, saying, you'd make a good lawyer, I said, you know what? I loved English. I loved arguing. I was like, yeah, I think this will work. So, I mean, it definitely is important. I've had mentors. I've been mentors. I've been mentors to others. So, I mean, I am definitely in agreement with Sarah Johnson White about that. It's important because you just never know the impact that you would have on that person. It could be the smallest thing, and it definitely can propel somebody to the next level. So yes, that is me.
I'm going to piggyback on the mentorship and the representation in kind of, a conglomerate, but just, really being visible and doing some of that one-on-one work, I find is really important in ways in which they're seeing you more than one time. And so I've involved with organizations where in some instances, I was the only person of color. When I first moved here, I was involved with the Junior League. And at that time, when I moved here, there was only a handful of women of color that were involved with Junior League. Now there are many. We've had several women of color who have been president and who sit on the board now. But at that time, there were very few. But they're very active and very visible all around the city and in some of the most impoverished areas. And so what I would do is I would volunteer to tutor at some of the schools in the most impoverished areas. And what I found is when I would go, the kids would light up and they're like, oh, you look like me. I'm not used to seeing this. Usually it's someone else who comes here and they're coming here and I don't really relate to them. But now I see you and they're asking me all these questions. What do you do? And so I would start to come every month or every other week. And they would get to know me. And then I would talk to them about, well, how are you doing in school? And so, that's another way. And then they also, though, see us. They see us and get to see, oh, this is a professional woman. She's giving back to her community. She does X, Y, and Z. She has this position in her company and she cares. And this is what she's about. So it goes both ways. It educates others and it educates the children.
And the icing is that she's a Delta. I'm sorry, I just had to put that plug in too. And the icing on the cake is that she's a Delta.
Well, I'm glad that you all touched on this idea of educating our own and mentorship, because I want to ask you this question. And because during the NBA All-Star game, you may have seen the commercials that had LeBron James talking to his younger self just before he was graduating from high school and being drafted. So if you could speak to your younger self on the eve of graduating from high school, what would you tell yourself?
I'll kick it off. I would tell young Tanya to be open to all the possibilities. Don't limit yourself. Don't think of all the things that could go wrong or the things that are hindering you. I would say be open to all the possibilities and, shoot for the stars, because, this is one life, and we have to max it out. I think the thing I would have done more is travel abroad as a college student. But thankfully, my career at Alliance Bernstein afforded me to travel throughout the world on someone else's dime, which was a beautiful thing while working. But definitely, don't put limits on yourself. Really be open to all opportunities.
I'll chime in. I think I will tell myself, you will be okay. You will be okay. that you are not going to know all the answers, or you're not going to have all the answers. And that there are going to be challenges that you're going to face, good or bad or indifferent. But the longest, what's going to happen is that you will go through those challenges, but you will overcome them. You're going to be okay on the other side. You know, I mean, you're going to have bumps along the road, but you are strong, and you have, you know, what Tanya said, you know, you have this one life to live. So live it to the fullest. Live it to the fullest, and, you know, be happy for those good times, and even appreciate those bad times, because it makes you stronger.
I think I would say, don't let fear limit you. So, I grew up in a very rural area, and just going to where my university was in Morgantown, that was like a big town to me. And it's really a very medium-sized area. So it took me a while to get accustomed to living in a more urban area. And over the years now, of course, I've traveled abroad and all of that, but it took me a while to get used to that. And I would say, I would just tell my younger self to just go ahead and just go ahead and just not be afraid. Just get over the hump, travel more, and just don't be scared.
I think I would tell my younger self, one, start saving some money at 17. That would be a good idea. But also not to take everything so seriously all the time. I was definitely very focused of, this is what I want to do, this is what I have to do. And I had a whole plan as to, I have to become, it was very important to me for whatever reason. I had to become an attorney by 25. And then I have to do this and I have to do this. In my plot and my plan, that wasn't God's plan. I did become an attorney before I'm 25, but it didn't matter. Ultimately, if I'd become one at 45, if I'd become one, you know, whenever I was supposed to, is when it should have happened. So I would tell myself, definitely focus on your studies, of course, but also don't take life so seriously, because you don't get 19 and 20 back.
You said a whole word right there, Sarah. You said, I jumped out of my seat when I jumped out of my seat. Listen, I think that I would tell my younger self, you don't have to be perfect. And that if you're not perfect, you're still okay. And that the only person who's expecting you to be all of that is you. So take the stress off yourself. Give yourself some grace and stop stressing your own doggone self out. That's the advice that I would give to my 19-year-old self.
You are dropping some jewels tonight. Oh my, yes, indeed. Dropping some, testify, girl. Dropping some serious jewels tonight.
So one of the things that we discussed, and I think Sora Paris, you brought it up as well, that there's some professions or some jobs out there that don't require you to even have a degree. So, and we know that there's an emphasis on starting small businesses and entrepreneurship and so forth. And a lot of people may say, well, then why should I go to college? So should we, and this is for all of you, should we be having these discussions of college versus entrepreneurship, or are they something that should be discussed together?
Well, I'll speak from a lawyer standpoint. You have to go to college. I mean, there's no other way around that. You have to go to college. You have to go to law school in order to be an attorney. I mean, I've heard actually from one of my colleagues, older colleagues that's retired from my job. He said like years ago that that you could just take the bar exam without going to law school. And I'm like, why would someone want to do that? I don't know. But I mean, and if you pass the bar, you can be deemed a licensed attorney. Again, I don't know why someone would do that. But I mean, speaking from a lawyer standpoint, you would definitely have to go to school. But if you're afforded an opportunity once you've graduated to do, well, they will call it a clerkship, not necessarily an internship. Maybe, I mean, some places you may be able to do an internship. That would be great. Because I took advantage of actually having an internship before I went to law school. While I was in high school, I did an internship because I knew that I wanted to be an attorney. And that internship gave me an opportunity to actually sit with judges that at the time. I was able to sit with the Honorable, God rest the dead, Bruce Wright, and some other judges in the New York City area. And that solidified for me that this was the career path that I wanted. So, I mean, it's encouraged, but I mean, for those particular type of careers where you don't necessarily have to have a degree, the internship will definitely help because you need to apply those skills somewhere. It resonates, though you're not able to hone those skills unless you actually immerse yourself in it and do whatever the task is. Because you could have the book smart, you can get the education part, the books part about it, but the actually doing the work, the hands-on, that comes from, whether it be an internship, clerkship, whatever.
I'm definitely an advocate of both. I think the rigor of education, the networking that takes place in college education, not just the academic side, but the social side of that. That's how you build a network of people that you will have lifelong friendships with, hopefully. But then also the practical application. I went to school and worked through the latter part of high school and throughout college. So I think it's that combination of, academics and practical application, whether that's entrepreneurship or working in your, aspired field, I think is really important. I think for me, initially, I wanted to be a broker. And then when I worked with brokers, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, and then progressed to asset management, then institutional management. I think that exposure to what you think you want to do is really important on your career path, whether that's working at a corporation or working for yourself.
I also am a strong advocate of get as much education in many ways as you can. In no matter what it is that you want to do, if you want to run a business, it is good to know something about business, how to run a business. If you want to become a musician, you can study music theory. There's always more to be learned in school. And school is one of the few places where you have the opportunity to think about things you would never have thought about, to read books that you would never, ever have read, and to be exposed to ideas that wouldn't normally come across your path. And I think that will help you no matter what you do.
So being in town development, I'll kind of piggyback on that and say, I kind of have a two-pronged answer. So, there's learning and then there's traditional learning, right? So we've got learning over here, which can be many different things, right? And so there's paths that people can take. They can take classes, they can do, shadowing, they can do apprenticeships, they can take courses such as things on, Coursera, or some certification programs. They can go to trade schools. And there is a huge gap in this country and need for people who are doing things like welding, plumbing, in the construction business, electricians and things like that don't require a degree. And we need people to do those things. And there are people who can do those things who probably may not be successful going to college and could do very well learning those things and should go down those career paths and will make a good deal of money doing them if they would go down those career paths. And I can't say that those people should get a college degree, and we need people to do those things. And so there's a learning path that anyone, no matter where you are in life, you can have as many degrees as possible. You can have a PhD, but everyone should always continue to learn. And so you need to have some sort of path where you're continuously learning something. I'm always continuously learning in some way, but learn and have a goal no matter what that is and how you get that information, right? For entrepreneurship, what I would say is there are people we know who they just have that gift, right? They can sell, they can innovate, they can come up with stuff. They have that savvy, you know, they're hustlers, right? But then we know those people who can do that, but they don't quite have that business sense. And so we always hear about someone who had this great ability to sell. They had a great business, a restaurant, a product, or whatever it is, and then it doesn't work or it goes under. And we say, whoa, what happened? Their restaurant was always full, or people were always buying from them. How did it fail? It was that business sense that they didn't learn because they didn't get that education. And so I think for people going into entrepreneurship, at least having an associate degree, I would say at least an associate degree in business is going to help you, because you're going to get the foundation you need. You're going to get that accounting. You're going to get the finance, learn how to keep books, at least on a basic level. Sure, you can pay somebody to do those things, but you need to have some basic skills in knowing how to do some things to make sure that your business is going to be able to make it. It's going to be able to, you're going to be able to look at things and say, I can make, because you got to make decisions, and you got to make sound decisions and make sure that your business can stay afloat, that you can pay your employees. At the end of the day, you can stay in business and you can keep things going, not just sell stuff and keep money coming in, but are you still having money to keep going and to keep your business solvent and to keep making money over time?
There's nothing much more that I can add to what has already been said, because, you know, Deltas being Deltas, just we're thorough with it. So I will just say this, regardless of, absent, you know, take a step back. The discussion is really about, to me, being intentional and having a backup plan. If you want to be prepared for this life, you need to be intentional and have a backup plan. And if you are intentional, that means that you have put thought into what is it that you would need in order to be successful in whatever path it is that you're choosing. And if it just so happens that education is what will best put you on that path, then please, by all means, get that education. If you feel as though you may need to get some experience first before getting the education, then, you know, then that is fine. If you feel as though you want to give yourself a shot and take a shot at entrepreneurship first before the education, and it fits within your plan, because you have set your intentions, then that's fine. But I would always say have a backup plan. And if there's education is the ultimate backup plan, because you will always learn transferable skills that will serve you in whatever path it is that you choose, whether it be another entrepreneurship opportunity or it be a more traditional job in which, you know, and oftentimes you need education. But I do know that for me in the federal government, for civil service, there's often no minimum education requirement. There's often no minimum education requirement. So you can have all the student loans you want, but it's not going to help you get that job, but you're going to be paying those student loans. And I think that with the rising cost of education, we really do need to think about that. And so what I think that we need to be telling our kids is not, make sure you go to school, make sure you get to school, make sure you get that degree. You know, you got to get them more degrees in order to be ahead of the next person. That's not it. And with the rising cost of education, all you're doing is putting them into debt, right? You know, and so I think that it really is the conversation about be intentional and make the decision that is best for you, be that pursuing entrepreneurship opportunity or education, but always advocating that from a backup plan perspective to have education in that back hip pocket.
Right, you're right, because I think, what is it, Maryland, the state of Maryland just announced that they're removing having a degree now as a requirement.
Yeah.
To get a job in their state government now.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, I mean, it's hard to believe that we've been on this now for an hour and a half, and I'm sure we could probably go on for a little bit longer. But before we wrap up and I bring Brother Smith on to do the wrap up, I want to go around Robin really quickly. And what would you like to leave our audience with? What pearls of wisdom that you have tucked away in your back pocket somewhere that you would like to leave our audience with this evening?
see Sora Brown is unmuted, so I will let her go ahead.
Oh, I think I just forgot to put myself on mute, but you know what? Here's what I will leave you with, because this is just what's on my heart. God is faithful. God is faithful, and I do believe that we all have a path. There's a purpose and a plan for all of our lives, and sometimes we get in the way, because we're too busy trying to control our circumstances. And so if I would say anything to you, because I've got a whole part of my life that I'm like, what in the hell was I doing? I'm sure it was making sense to me at the time, but it wasn't God's plan for my life, right? And in the peace that you have when you are really surrendering your plan to God's will is priceless. And so what I would just say is that whatever you do, just to stay focused on what it is that God has for your life. And please believe that God will open doors for you when it is in alignment with his purpose and plan for your life. God will open doors for you that you didn't even know were possible. But you have to submit your will to his. And so that I'll just leave with that.
I would say, because we've talked a lot tonight about careers. We've hit a little bit about finances and about a couple of other things, but definitely, Sora Brown talked about faith, and I would say no matter what you're doing in your life, always stay centered and focus on the things that matter the most. Never forget and lose sight of God and your family. God, your family, take care of your health, because all these other things can come and go, but you want to make sure that you keep your family close, that you have your health, and you keep your faith in God.
I would say that what you are is God's gift to you, and what you make of yourself is your gift to God. Yes, that would be, and for women, the women out there, just know that you are a force to be reckoned with. Always remember that. You are a force to be reckoned with. That's all I got.
I just want to, as they say, piggyback off of that, to also say that God gave everyone a purpose, and part of the purpose is to help. So no matter whether you have no degrees, whether you have 15 degrees, no matter what it is that you do, find something that you're passionate about and become an advocate in your community, in your wherever it is that you need to be. If you find a problem, work on solving it, and work with like-minded people, and surround yourself by people who are equally passionate.
And I will amen all of the comments that my beautiful Soras have shared. But I believe that we are all blessed to be a blessing. And I think as long as we keep God first, love our families, but also we need to love ourselves and be gentle with ourselves so that we can have the strength to be that blessing to someone else.
Well, I'm going to leave it right there and say amen to all of that. And thank you all for taking part in this latest webcast series. And thank you all out there on Facebook and on YouTube who have been watching this as well and submitting your questions to this conversation. We thank you for taking part in all of this. And so I'm going to turn things over to our brother Smith, but again, on behalf of the Brooklyn Long Island Alumni Chapter, I am Kevin Boston Hill, and we want to thank you all again for tuning in to this latest webcast series. And we hope to see you again in our future webcast series. And Brother Smith, please take us home.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for moderating this evening. And thank you to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. You know, as we put together this panel celebrating Women's History Month and the women of the D9 organizations, Divine 9 organizations, the organizations of the National Panelist Council, it was really about celebrating dynamic women within the communities that we serve. And it just so happens that you all are members of Delta Sigma Theta. So we can celebrate that and the platform that Delta has given you to be able to elevate yourselves, not only personally, but or within your organization, but also within the community, because the morals that you have learned, the ideals that you have learned or have grown into as members of your organization have definitely been amplified with the work that you do within the community and for your families and everywhere else that you touch and reach. So we thank you for joining us this evening. Be sure to stay tuned to the space hosted by Brooklyn Long Island Alumni Chapters. We celebrate Women's History Month. We're going to be back next week from 7 to 8:30 p.m. with the dynamic ladies of Zeta Phi Beta. And we're going to wrap out the month with the ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated on March 31st from 7 to 8:30 p.m. as they celebrate their centennial. So we hope to see you all next Thursday. Until then, stay safe, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.